In the very beginning, there was nothing. Then God spoke, and the world was made. He filled the sky with the sun, the moon, and the twinkling stars. He covered the land with green grass, tall trees, and colorful flowers. He filled the oceans with fish and the air with birds. God created all the animals, big and small. Finally, he made the very first people, a man named Adam and a woman named Eve. God loved them very much and gave them a beautiful home called the Garden of Eden. It was a perfect place, filled with everything they could ever need or want. God gave Adam and Eve only one rule to follow in their perfect home. He told them they could eat the fruit from any tree in the garden except for one. This special tree was called the tree of knowledge of good and evil. God warned them that if they ate its fruit, they would surely die. For a time, Adam and Eve lived happily in the garden, walking and talking with God every day. They were innocent and had no reason to be afraid or ashamed. Their lives were full of peace and joy, just as God had planned for them. One day, a clever serpent came to Eve and started to ask her questions. The serpent tricked her. It told her that God was not telling the truth. It said that if she ate the fruit from the forbidden tree, she would not die. Instead, her eyes would be opened, and she would become wise, just like God. Eve looked at the fruit and saw that it was beautiful and seemed good to eat. She wanted the wisdom the serpent promised, so she took a bite and gave some to Adam, who ate it too. Instantly, everything changed. Adam and Eve felt shame for the first time and hid from God. Their disobedience brought sadness, pain, and death into the perfect world. God was sad, but he still loved them. He made them leave the Garden of Eden, but he did not leave them without hope. He made a promise that one day someone special would come to fix the brokenness caused by their choice. This promise of a savior would be a light for people for many, many years to come, a sign of God's unending love and his plan to bring people back to him. As time went on, the world became a place filled with bad choices and sadness. God saw this and was very sorry, but he found one good man named Noah. God told Noah he was going to send a great flood to wash the world clean. He instructed Noah to build a giant boat, called an ark. Noah obeyed God. He gathered his family and 2 of every kind of animal, leading them into the safety of the ark. For 40 days and 40 nights, rain fell from the sky, covering the whole earth with water. But Noah and everyone on the ark were safe, floating above the flood until the waters went down. Many years later, God spoke to another man named Abraham. God made a big promise to him. He told Abraham to leave his home and his family and travel to a new land that God would show him. God promised to make Abraham the father of a great nation, with as many descendants as there are stars in the sky. Even though Abraham was old and had no children, he trusted God's promise completely. He packed up everything he owned and set out on a long journey, not knowing where he was going. Because of his great faith, Abraham became the father of a new people who would carry God's promise forward. The descendants of Abraham, called the Israelites, later became slaves in the land of Egypt. They suffered for many years under a cruel king called Pharaoh. God heard their cries for help and chose a man named Moses to lead them to freedom. Moses was a humble shepherd, but with God's power, he stood up to Pharaoh. After God sent 10 amazing plagues upon Egypt, Pharaoh finally let the people go. Moses led them out of Egypt, and when Pharaoh's army chased them, God parted the waters of the Red Sea, allowing the Israelites to cross on dry land before the water crashed down on their enemies. Later, the Israelites needed a king. God chose a young shepherd boy named David. David was not big or strong, but he had a brave heart that trusted in God. When a fearsome giant named Goliath challenged the Israelite army, everyone was afraid. But David, armed with only a sling and a few stones, faced the giant. He knew that God was with him. David defeated Goliath and saved his people. He grew up to become the greatest king of Israel, a man after God's own heart, and it was from his family line that God promised the future Savior would be born. After many, many years, the time for God's promise to be fulfilled finally arrived. A young woman named Mary was visited by an angel who told her she would have a special baby and his name would be Jesus. He would be the Son of God. Jesus was not born in a palace, but in a humble stable in a little town called Bethlehem. Shepherds who were watching their sheep in the fields nearby saw a bright star and heard a choir of angels singing in the sky. They came to worship the newborn king. Wise men from far away followed the star and brought precious gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. When Jesus grew up, He traveled all over the land, teaching people about God's love and his kingdom. He told simple stories called parables to help everyone understand big truths. He taught people to love God with all their hearts and to love their neighbors as themselves. Jesus also performed many amazing miracles that showed he was truly God's son. He healed people who were sick, helped blind people to see again, and even made a man who had died come back to life. He showed power over nature by calming a raging storm with just a few words. Jesus spoke about a place of eternal sadness called hell. He described it more than anyone else in the Bible, often calling it Gehenna, which was named after a real valley outside Jerusalem where trash was burned. He said it was a place of weeping and gnashing of teeth, a place of outer darkness and fire that never goes out. He told a story about a rich man who ignored a poor beggar named Lazarus. After they died, the rich man was in torment, forever separated from God's goodness, while Lazarus was in a place of comfort. Jesus warned people about this to show how important it is to live a life of love and compassion. Even though Jesus only did good things and showed love to everyone, some leaders became jealous of him. They arrested him, and even though he had done nothing wrong, he was sentenced to die on a cross. His friends were very sad as they watched him die. They buried him in a tomb and rolled a giant stone in front of the entrance. But the story did not end there. 3 days later, some of his friends went to the tomb and found the stone rolled away and the tomb empty. An angel told them that Jesus was alive. He had risen from the dead, proving that God's love is more powerful than even death itself. Throughout the stories of the Bible, God often used special messengers called angels to deliver important news to people on earth. Sometimes, these angels looked just like ordinary men. This happened when 3 visitors came to Abraham to tell him that he and his wife would finally have a son in their old age. At other times, angels appeared in a much more glorious and supernatural way. The prophet Daniel described seeing an angel with a face like lightning and eyes like flaming torches. The Apostle John saw an angel wrapped in a cloud with a rainbow over his head. No matter how they looked, their message often began with the comforting words, "Do not be afraid." God also spoke through special people called prophets. These brave men and women were chosen to share God's messages with kings and ordinary people, often during difficult times. A powerful prophet named Elijah challenged the false prophets on Mount Carmel, calling down fire from heaven to show that God was the one true God. Isaiah had visions of the future Savior, describing how he would be born to a virgin and would be a suffering servant who would be hurt for the mistakes of others. Daniel was so faithful to God that he was thrown into a den of hungry lions, but an angel protected him so he was not harmed at all. The Bible is full of stories about people making choices, and one such story is about a man named Jacob. After tricking his brother, Jacob fled to his uncle Laban's house. He worked for Laban for many years, but Laban deceived him multiple times, changing his wages and tricking him into marrying both of his daughters. Despite Laban's unfairness, God blessed Jacob greatly, and he became very wealthy. When Laban grew jealous and Jacob feared for his family's safety, he decided to leave. Laban chased after him, but God warned Laban in a dream not to harm Jacob. Instead of fighting, they made a promise, a covenant of peace, and parted ways forever. From the first garden to the final promises, the Bible shows that God gives people the freedom to choose. He wants everyone to choose the path of goodness, love, and faith. The stories of Adam and Eve, Noah, Moses, and David show the consequences of disobedience, but also the incredible rewards of trusting God. The life of Jesus shows the deepest expression of God's love, offering a way for everyone to be forgiven and to have a close relationship with Him. The message is clear. God does not want anyone to be lost or separated from Him, but desires for all people to turn to Him and receive the eternal joy of being in His presence.